Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. I'm your host, Cassy Clayman. This season, we are focusing on proving your worth. Today, we're discussing self-advocacy for solo teams with Amanda Simmonds. Amanda has spent her career in roles that have required a ton of self-advocacy and support from leadership. Amanda has spent the last 20 years leading people and operations teams to make positive change in public accounting firms. Amanda, thank you so much for coming to the show today. Before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little more about yourself?
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And I love this topic. I feel like over 20 years, almost every position that I have had has been created for me, or I was the first one in it. So to your point, it takes some clarity and some being driven to make those things successful. And I'm excited to talk about that today.
Definitely. Well, can you being a department of one or a department of few people and how you ended up being in leadership roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came into public accounting in a 30-person firm, and I was their very first firm administrator. So they did have a job description, which if you're in any of these roles, usually that's a starting point. And if your job actually looks like that in a year, it usually doesn't. But that was kind of my first step into kind of figuring out a role on the fly. There was a job description, but at the same time, they didn't really know what they needed. And so it was a great mix of forging my own path, getting to choose the direction of the job, but no one had really done it before. So it was a co-creation, which was fun too, of the managing partner to be able to evolve that position into what it became when I left. The girl who replaced me, she's now a partner, and so very critical to that firm. And I feel really great that I got to put the foundation in place for that.
That's incredible. Can you talk about how you had to advocate for yourself in those moments talk about how you had to advocate for yourself in those moments.
Yeah, so I felt like I had to be pretty confident and humble at the same time. I needed to be humble about what I didn't know and honest about that. So I, had to ask questions, knowing when to seek help and when to get training, on additional things. But then also be confident in the things I did know how to do and the value that I brought to the table. And I think working those two things together enabled me to build credibility, build those relationships with the stakeholders, and help with that self-advocacy part. They knew that I was there, I was open to feedback or to, learning new things, but I was also confident enough to make the decision or to step up when something needed to be happening. And so it made it mutually beneficial to everybody. There's still hard things, right? Because it's a job, and that's true. But a lot of it was that relationship building and even that internal customer service. Like, I wanted them to know I was there to help make their lives easier. And once they figure out that really is why I'm motivated to, do those things, then I think it makes people want to help and want to help you advocate for yourself and advocate for you when you're not in the room.
Absolutely. It can be kind of intimidating to be in a room or to potentially be in a room with those leaders. Do you have strategies that you found most effective for demonstrating your value to those stakeholders?
Well, I would say a couple of things. In public accounting, the billable hour is the driving force. And it seems like, we live and die by that, by realization or production. And most of us in these sort of roles are non-billable roles. And so that is hard sometimes, especially to prove our worth in dollars and cents. We do bring worth. I'm completely convinced of that. If you hire a HR person or payroll, then you are getting an expert to do that and not someone else's part-time job on top of everything else. And that is something that has been just a growth area for me. My brain does not think in numbers. I'm not an accountant, but we've got a lot of smart people around us. And so building those relationships with the leaders that already see your value, that know the value of those operation positions, and helping them be an advocate for you when you're not in the room, making sure that they know what you're doing or they know what you need from leadership, and then letting them help me, in my case, help me understand how my value does translate to dollars and cents, because that wasn't something that's not my default. And so just being able to learn from those smart accounting leaders as to what that value in dollars and cents brings or is, and then being able to own that and be confident in it. And so it does, not always are we in a partner meeting. So you need those partners that are at the table that do value what you bring and that operational leadership, and then learning how they think about the value you bring and the dollars and the cents or whatever it is, so that you're more set up for success to talk about them that way.
That's great advice. And I think, it can be tough when you're in a room of multiple partners with multiple personalities. Do you have insight into how you found those specific partners or leaders who you were like, oh yeah, they're going to be my advocate, or I can have a conversation with them? How did you identify those people who would be your supporters?
I feel like it's probably a feeling more than anything. I mean, if you're having conversations, I mean, you know who values you and who thinks you're overhead. Like that, just to me, has always been a very clear thing. Whether it's how they talk about it or how they don't really want to engage when you need something from them. Like there are leaders who just want to write it off, and you're, not a benefit to me. And so those people are usually very obvious. And so, just to not, they're not going to be an advocate for that. But then there's usually the leaders who engage in those operational things. They're the ones that want to join you in moving forward this strategic initiative, or they're the ones maybe bringing, hey, have we considered this software tool? Could you go and evaluate this for me? Like they're the ones that are engaged in those operation things, or marketing or finance, whatever your area is. And so it just is an awareness, I think, of what people value and how they're willing to engage.
Great advice. Just a feeling. We can all relate to that for sure.
It's hard to quantify if someone values you. I just think that it's something that you feel in the relationship.
Definitely. Well, I mean, as you've been doing this for a long time, and you've sort of moved into your own leadership roles in your own right. So I'm curious how you take some of those lessons that you learned coming up into your leadership now, and how you support and advocate for others.
Oh, that's good. I think that is a huge part of leadership or mentoring, and you don't have to be a partner for that to happen, right? So I know, I still remember how hard each of those hard days was, especially when you've got the bad days with the partner who completely thinks you're invaluable and wants, your salary to be allocated somewhere else. I mean, those are hard days. When I started in accounting, maybe there was two half people I managed. It wasn't a very big team, but by the time I left, it was managing 5 people. And each of those hires, I was very intentional about setting up for success. I was the person to set them up for success and didn't want them to have to go and prove their value to the partner group or to somebody else. I mean, obviously somebody approved the hire, but that's different than getting that credibility or people knowing your value in the firm. And so for me, leadership or mentoring those people that I directly manage has become one of my favorite things, because I know where I've messed up, and I want to share, like, hey, you may never do this, but watch out for, this, or, just try to make everybody's day better. Whatever the things are, have been very intentional in that. And even being involved in other kind of groups for operational professionals, I think sometimes even just bringing together people who are like-minded and have like roles. I love that AIM does that. Like, you need a community to talk about these things, because sometimes if you're the only one in your firm, no one else really understands. They don't understand what it's like to try to work for 7 or 20 partners, and everybody's, task is a priority today. And so that community of other people to get ideas from, to learn from, sometimes to just be able to vent or connect to, has been valuable as well. And just always trying to help the people coming behind you in whatever way that you can.
Well said. Something I know about you is that you are good at creating communities. Do you feel like you've had to, or do you feel like you've kind of gravitated towards creating those communities out of a sense of, there's a need for it? And do you feel like those created communities have helped you become who you are today?
Yeah. I have usually created communities that I needed, like they were missing or there was a gap there and I couldn't find a community. And so I have created it. And so sometimes those are just very small groups, but they've always been very powerful. In Missouri, we started the first chapter of CPA FMA, which is a organization specifically focused on firm administrators. And we had a state, chapter for that, finally, to be able to connect people across networks that I've been involved in. We've created, smaller places for people to just get to know each other and connect on common purposes or values. And to me, that helped fill a bucket that was not getting filled anywhere else. And then it was so fun to do with other people. So I love doing good things with good people. And so for me, it was kind of two. It was like, yes, I needed it. And then also to help provide that for other people.
I love that. You talked about, we all love the good stuff. And you mentioned those hard days, and we all have hard days. What are some ways that you persevered through them? Because, obviously you can't just quit when you have a hard day. Wouldn't it be nice? But what are some things that you've done to like take care of yourself in those moments and to maintain your sense of connection to what you were doing?
Oh man, yeah. I think that something we've all learned, probably if you've been in these sort of um, positions very long, is that the less you can take personal, the better. Now that doesn't that doesn't mean that you don't take it personally, but I've had to sort through that in my own world. Like if something comes at me that is 8 o'clock, and whether it was back in the old days when we're in an office and they show up at my door, or they show up on Teams at 8 o'clock and it's something we've done wrong, or it's a fire that we've got to put out, that is very hard. And what I have learned is that I have to be intentional not to let that 8 a.m. fire affect the rest of my day, but then also every other meeting I'm in, which could be, how many, 30 people for that day. So if I don't take that and handle it appropriately on my insides, then I can also ruin everybody else's day. And that's hard, but that has been a maturing that I have done over the last 20 years, to be able to handle whatever the issue is to the best of my ability, maybe not at all in that moment. And really, when those people show up at your door, they want you to listen to them. I did not know that in the beginning of my career. I thought I had done something wrong and they were showing up to blame me. And that's not true. They usually just want someone to listen and try to solve their problem. So I've learned from one of my teammates who is magical in this area, to listen, to just listen, let them get it out, document what they need. And if you can't solve it right then, okay, I will follow up with you after I try to figure it out, right? Like, it's not that they always need something at that moment, but they want to know you're going to try to solve it for them. So just the freedom to come back to it, I'll get back with you. Let me try to solve this for you. Then before the next meeting, like taking that time and just letting myself process and reset whatever those emotions were, if they were negative or stress, whatever. I want to kind of cap those and not let them go into my next meeting. I want to be able to take the time, even if it's just 2 minutes, to reset and show up in that next meeting for those people. How do I want them to see me? Because it's not their fault, whatever happened. And if I show up in a bad energy, then that persists, right? And that goes and affects their day. So I've been very intentional over the last stage of my career to just kind of box it up, let it sit until I can get to it, but then go with a fresh kind of energy to the next meeting, intentionally showing up for whatever that block of time is.
Yeah, absolutely. Intention is a great word. Taking that step back is a good way to kind of move forward. I mean, you're talking about taking a big problem that early in careers we might think that you need to solve everybody's problem immediately, but it's a great lesson to learn how to know exactly what does need to be solved now versus what needs some time. Great advice.
Yeah, it's amazing to, I mean, now this month actually marks my 20th year in public accounting. And so it is very interesting to look back and be like, oh, who was Amanda, year 1, year 5, year 10, to now. And that's great, right? Career progression, maturity, that's what we want. And we learn a lot of lessons, especially in something like this topic of advocating for yourself when maybe you're the only team member or a small team. Like, how do we do that? And that changes too over your career. You just kind of learn some of those things.
Yeah, do you think you've taken time to have some of that self-reflection to be able to know those things moving forward?
Oh, that's good. Um, I maybe should a little more. I feel like those times when it does come to mind, maybe I should do this. Like, I just want to send a thank you card to like everybody who has helped me in my career.
Mm.
So maybe I should do that. But it is nice to just be like, man, thank you for what you invested in me. And I have had those conversations because a lot of times, I mean, if you think about your favorite bosses or your favorite leaders, like they're just hustling like the rest of us. They're not sitting down at night and being like, yes, I made a positive impact, because most of the time there's fires to deal with and there's more things on the to-do list. And so it has been so appreciated when I have done that. Like, you might not know this, but you changed my life, or you had a positive impact on me, or you helped me know I could do this. So I need to do some more of that probably. And it's really cool to see the relationships that you form throughout your career and how, the important ones stay with you. And that's been really fun. Um, I think over these last few, maybe this last couple of years, it has been a great confidence to be confident in what I know. And I think I didn't have that up until just recently. To know that I know what I'm talking about, whether that's in operations or people or a project. Like, I've done it enough times that I know and I can own, that experience. And so that has been a very cool shift to be like, no, I can tell you this is going to take longer. You might not believe me. But really just a confidence, I think, that has come with age and with experience. And that is what I really hope to take forward. I'm kind of making a pivot a little bit, and I didn't know, but I have recently found just a passion for coaching people, especially, people who are seeking personal development or leadership. And so that's a certification I'm in the middle of and going to look to use more in my future career, and just really want to invest in people and be confident that one of my core longings to help people, I can do it even more through coaching. Something I've probably always done in my life, but not in an official capacity. It's really just been, mentoring or helping people along. So I'm very excited to take what I have learned as I try something new, I try something different in an official capacity, and just hope that it makes a positive impact on even more people.
I'm sure you're going to be brilliant.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I mean, reflection has led to you feeling confident and empowered by your years of experience and knowledge. And I think that that's a really, I mean, we're talking about reflecting. That's a great point. And it's like a new springboard for the next 20 years, whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Empowered. That's a good word.
Yeah. You mentioned something that I want to talk about, which was different people at different points in your career and their career. And, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about not even developing, but like maintaining some of those professional relationships and learning from people. Because I mean, you don't necessarily have to learn from just the partners or just the leaders in your own firm. So could you talk a little bit about those connections?
Oh, yes, I would love to. So, one thing of my recent position and stage of career that has been so encouraging has been connecting with other women in the firm that I'm in, and other women who like just kind of have that positive energy and who want to kind of spread it and, equip other women. And so that I remember didn't exist for me personally in such an impactful way until this kind of last stage. And for me, a lot of it was just being confident enough to take the chance to send the team's message or to send the email that says, "Hey, I saw you speak. I would love to just have a few minutes of your time, hear your story." That's really it. And just kind of ask for that 15 minutes with someone that I felt like I wanted to connect with. I've never had anybody say no to that. Um, but you don't always find a deep connection with each of those people, right? Like sometimes it's just an extra network connection. You connect on LinkedIn, they'd help you if you need it and vice versa. But man, have I found some really deep connections through doing that. And we even like put together an informal just kind of group of these ladies because it's the kind of people that even though you haven't known each other a long time, you're going to be connected for life. And I am so thankful that those women were willing to help me through some challenging times. They were words of encouragement and just saw the positive things about me that I was starting to doubt. And then I was able to do the same thing. Many of us have actually been through some big life things over the last couple of years. And I was able to do the same for them, like, man, keep going, or sending those notes of encouragement. And it's been so cool. I've never had that deep connected friends at work in my career until now. And what a special thing it is. So that has been very cool to take the chance. And then they took the chance to connect with me, right? And then we become like real life friends. I think before that, it's still, to me, I love the world of LinkedIn because I can connect with anybody, but then I can take that relationship as deep as I want, right? So if we work together and we are centered around the same purposes, like we can connect in a lot of ways, right? We can connect on LinkedIn, we can have Teams meetings, even if you live in a different part of the world, and really just investing in those relationships. Not everybody is going to be your best friend, but relationships make things happen, right? They're the things that help you find that dream job or that mentor or that coach or that, you know, vacation you didn't know you needed to take. Like, oh yeah. So I just think that relationships are huge, especially in the time we're in. Man, people are so busy and the billable expectations, are so much. I think it's a disservice for ourselves, though, personally, if we don't carve out time for relationships at some level. So I don't know if that actually answers your question. You can ask me again if it doesn't.
No, it was great. One sec. One of my headphones died. Can you still hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. No, you answered that question perfectly. I know we sort of veered off from
A lot of words.
the stated questions, but honestly, that's all. I mean, that was perfectly said, and that's pretty much all I have to ask you. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on?
I would like to, I think one of the things that we were maybe going to touch on is managing your workload
Okay, let
and
me ask that question
prioritizing
then.
tasks and stuff. Okay.
Perfect. Well, in the vein of or talking about how everyone's so busy, I mean, I think I'm busy, you're busy, everyone is busy. How do you personally effectively manage your workload and prioritize those tasks to ensure you're meeting those goals without being overwhelmed?
Oh man, this is a good question. It's a hard question, right? Um, but I think it's critical for us being successful. So, a couple of things that I would say is project management, clear, constant over communication, and boundaries. So, let me say a little bit about each of those things. So, if you are in one of these roles, I mean, you're doing so much. It's the kind of typical chaos coordinator, right? Whether you fall in HR or marketing or anything, you're managing projects and people and timelines, and sometimes you don't have authority over those people, right? And I just think that if you are constantly overwhelmed, even getting some training even in project management, then I think would help with that. For me, that is kind of that base level of what I needed to learn to be successful, because our whole job is managing so many things. And especially if you're in a small team, you're self-directed in that a lot of times. So if that's something that you're feeling or you're missing, then I would seek out training on project management, because I think that has been a game changer for me. Um, Being driven and having a good relationship with your boss has been key in prioritizing, right? Like, you've got to understand what the leadership's objectives are and expectations, but then sometimes you're sorting through those and you're prioritizing yourself, right? So just that communication and that connection. Um, but then not everything according to plan, because it's life and things happen. And so that stakeholder relationship or even the peer relationship, when those things go sideways, that communication that you've built that kind of foundation on, and then over communicating when things happen, that's huge, because then it lets everybody know that you are going to do what you said you're going to do, even if it's delayed or something goes a little sideways. I was in the middle of a semi-annual performance evaluation, big meeting, all the words, and it was my job to take the notes and then process them. I got a call that my then 2-year-old had split his head open, needed stitches, and it was a real conflict for me. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but like, okay, do I leave and, go with my husband to the ER? But I need to stay. Like, this is one of the biggest things and my boss came in and made the decision for me. Like, no, you go, and we'll take care of everything. And after we got the family stuff sorted, then I definitely met all of my expectations, and I took care of everything. But that communication, they had everything taken care of, and then I was able to come back in when I could. So I just think communication, um, doing it wrong creates so many more hurdles than we need. Doing it constantly, overly clear, helps in so many ways. And then the last thing that I love to talk about, because all of us are bad at it, is boundaries. And sometimes that's more for me than other people. I was feeling stressed. I was in meetings all day, every day, back to back. I didn't have any time, and I was getting overwhelmed, and it was killing me. So I was like, well, I need to do something different. Well, guess who manages my calendar? Me. Guess who manages my schedule? Me. And most of those meetings I set. And so I had to really even just like block some days and time on my calendar with a note to myself that said, do not schedule meetings, because I was the one, just back to back booking myself. We also need to set boundaries with other people, right? And I fully believe that we teach people how to treat us. And so if we show up and we want everybody to be successful, and here's our clear boundaries, then most of the time people are going to operate within that because they have boundaries too, right? The capitalist machine wants to get as much out of us as cheap as possible. And that's not because our bosses are bad people. It's just how the world works. And the world will take as much as we are willing to give. And so boundaries helps us not die, I think. Like we've got to figure out what those are and then set them for everybody to be successful, whether that's a stopping time or your notifications on your phone. Like you've got to have some intentionality around that, or there won't be a stop, right? You'll just work all the time. And then at the end, you'll be like, oh, why am I so empty and hate everything? Well, boundaries help keep that in some boxes. So those are the things that I would say as I was reflecting back, that have really helped me be successful, is being able to project manage, build relationships, clearly communicate, and set boundaries.
I mean, those are such good reminders, continue working on the skill sets that are going to make you successful, but then those boundaries, set future you up for success, whether future you is tomorrow you, a week from now you, a year from now you, like what you do today is going to set that person up for success. And that if you don't do that, that's how we get burned out. And then the last thing you talked about, the communication, it ties back into what you talked about not taking things personally, taking a step back, listening. So, really having an understanding of the broader picture and over communicating what's going on so that, everyone on your team that you're working with can help you if they're in a place to be able to do so.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for a beautiful conversation. It was delightful talking to you. What's next for you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. It's so fun. You always make things fun. So I'm willing to do anything with you.
Thanks.
I'm on LinkedIn. I love the community of LinkedIn and I love making new friends. So happy to connect with anybody there.
That's it for another episode of Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. A big thanks to all of you for listening in today, and again to Amanda for a delightful conversation. If you like what you heard, we'd love a review on the podcast platform you're listening to us on now. And be sure to listen to the other episodes of this season. Our theme is Proving Your Worth. You can learn more about Amplify and our past seasons on accountingmarketing.org. Look for the podcast under publications. I'm Cassy Clayman, marketing coordinator at Topel Forman. And if you want to connect with me, you can also reach out on LinkedIn. Thanks again, and we look forward to having you join us for another episode soon.